This is FutureX.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Roundtable discussion series hosted by FutureX. My name is Gonzalez. I am the co-founder of FutureX and the founder of Outlier HQ. We are a media and events company. We're excited to have you all here, and I think we're going to have a good time. So thank you for being with us. Now, this is going to be the first of many roundtable discussions that we're going to be hosting in the next several months here at FutureX. We're going to be covering a few different topics as well. We're going to go deep in a couple different areas, a lot of it having to do with futurist type of thinking, future of food, future of work, tech, all that good stuff. So stick around for other emails and information on some of our other roundtable discussions that we have coming up as well. Now, before I introduce my co-host, I want to give you the title of this specific roundtable discussion. We're going to be talking about school and work on your screen and what's the way forward. This is going to be 35, 45 minutes of a roundtable discussion with a very talented panelist and my co-host. So with that being said, let me introduce my co-host. My co-host is Lee Schneider. He is the co-founder of FutureX and the founder of Red Cup Agency. Lee, welcome.
Hey, thanks. So Ever and I put together FutureX as this social experiment in thinking positive about the future, which is getting more and more difficult, but we're hanging in there. The dystopia is easy, but thinking positively about the future and utopianism is a lot harder. So we're working on that with FutureX. The other thing that we're thinking about a lot is how to bridge the science fiction community, the fiction people, with the nonfiction people, the journalists. They're all a lot of visionaries there, a lot of people thinking about the future in both those fields, and we're trying to figure out how to get those folks talking to each other more. So that's going to be a topic of FutureX, roundtables like this. My background, media, and more media. I've done a lot of journalism, a lot of TV, and I've been all in with podcasting, just producing podcasts for the past 10 years. And I had to go get my good microphone to do this because Ever has his good microphone. So, you got to have good, when you have the good mic, you got to use it. That's something I have to remember.
Now, let's introduce our panelists as well. We're going to have them actually introduce themselves. Nobody wants to hear a written introduction, and so what we thought it'd be best for them to introduce themselves. So, Kelly, let's start with you. Please introduce yourself to the rest of the panelists and the audience, please.
Yeah, honored to be with you all tonight. And 11 years ago, I was exploring really how technology might enable educators to truly honor the identity and needs of all students, and led me to create a piece of technology called the Learning Genome Project. But in that process, I really discovered that we don't really have a model or a system of education that is prepared to really honor the identity of individuals because class sizes are so big. We've got systems in place that just really don't allow for that. So 10 years ago, I founded a kindergarten through 8th grade school called Anastasis Academy. And I designed the model to be identity honoring and kind of built from the ground up. And I'm currently the principal at that school and am starting to return back to the technology where it all started. So hopefully I can empower others to rethink education as well.
Very nice. Thank you. Eraina.
Thanks, guys. So yes, my name is Eraina Ferguson, and I'm a writer, a wife, and a mom. And I really am excited to be on this panel. I have 4 girls, one with special needs, and 2, 4, 6, and 20. And so I'm excited about being able to contribute to the conversation of what's happening now around, remote learning and digital learning and how to balance it all. And I'm also the founder of My Good Life, which is a social good startup for parents of children with special needs. And we're working on an app for parents. So I'm thrilled about that. And just released a book in the spring. And our family was featured in LA Parent Magazine this month, page 41. So I'm super psyched to
Very
be
nice.
here.
Congrats. Thank you. Zach.
I'm mostly known for drawing a comic strip called Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal, and probably most relevant, my wife and I wrote a book on future technology called Soonish, and I wrote I illustrated a slightly controversial comic book called Open Borders, and I am currently in the process of researching a book on the future of space travel. And I have a 3 and 6 year old, and remote learning is very difficult.
That it is, and we're going to get into it here in just a bit. But before we start with the questions, Lee, you kind of took the lead when it came to putting this panel together. Obviously, very powerful panel from their introductions and their work. Why these guys? Why this panel? Why these panelists? Why now?
Well, I think we're all grappling with these issues of school and work on screens, and finding the reason I wanted to talk to these folks is we're finding some incredible negatives, like, yes, homeschooling is hard, but homeschooling on Zoom is really hard. But we're also finding some positives in it, weirdnesses like lack of commute times or increased focus, or in my case, my kid has never seen so much of me. He's suddenly seen daddy working. He's figured out what I do for a living. And he never really, that was all very abstract. And there's a concreteness and a connection that's happening, even though it's painful and weird, and even though it's really testing us. So I thought that each one of these folks has a different story to tell about coping, but also making it work better in some weird backwards ways.
Nice. And I think the panelists that you chose, I think we're going to have a great discussion because of the diverse background and the things that are going on in their lives. So with that being said, let's get right into it. Right, the pandemic has changed everybody's lives for the most part. Let's talk about you specifically. We'll start with Kelly. What did your life look like a year ago compared to now when it comes to school and work?
Yeah, I think for me, looking back a year, I had gotten into this really nice routine being kind of 9 years into the school where you start to develop rhythms, you know what to expect. Everybody kind of jumps back into the school year, and it's like a family that we kind of just get back into the swing of things and know how to operate with each other. And we have some really sweet, just different things that we do every year that just are rituals that we count on. And headed into this year looks very different. Obviously, we weren't sure if we would be able to open to in person, and we happen to be small enough that we did, but it certainly doesn't look anything like it did last year. We're definitely learning how to do school in a pandemic, and it is different. We are very hands-on as a school. We take field trips regularly, weekly even. And so trying to find, how do we still be a rich learning experience together with our students when we can't do things the way that we generally do. We can't do the field trips. We can't do some of those just hands-on, close community things that we're accustomed to. So we're learning some new rhythms, learning how to do things a little bit differently, getting really creative. And it's been hard, but we've learned we can do hard things. So definitely a different year for sure.
Now, we were talking a little bit offline. There are obviously severe consequences for everything that we do, everything we don't do as well. With the number of students in your school, I think it's 58, 60, something small like that. You were saying that if 5% miss school for whatever reason, they can shut you down. What kind of pressure does that put on you and on the staff on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, correct. It's really hard because looking at, such a small community, we're talking 1-2 kids. So we really have had to talk to our families, to our students about, listen, we're all in this together. We know we can do hard things, but we really are going to have to work together to keep each other healthy, to keep each other at school, and do the best we can. Because like I said, that Tri-County Health, that is the more local health department, has put some boundaries in place and all intended to keep us safe, but it definitely makes life a little bit more difficult knowing at any moment we have to be ready to pivot back to online learning for, 14 days at a time. And so, yeah, it's that constant unknown of what we're walking into on any given day. And that definitely adds some anxiety, some some stress on the part of the educators who are having to make those decisions on a really immediate basis.
Sure. Zach, I know for just like the rest of us, you have to worry about work and school. So what does that look like? What has been the difference a year ago to today for you?
I think I've had a really unusual experience because I live on an old farm and I work from home, as does my wife. My wife's a researcher, and I write books and draw comics, and we write books together. And so I thought I was pretty well set up for this. But the downside is, with COVID, I don't have childcare. And so, it's like Lee was saying, it's like I have more time with my kids, but I don't know if I have more quality time because I'm insane. I also, and I imagine a lot of people like me are going through this where like I chose a profession that's fairly solitary because that suits my personality. But it's not working for my kids very well. They, miss being around other people and so, we set up computer things for them, but it just doesn't duplicate the in-person experience of being around other kids and other adults. And I'm not sure what the solution is because I don't think it's healthy for a parent to be doing everything for their kid, being your best friend and your dad and your teacher, there have to be other adults.
Yeah, I like that. Eraina, I know you have like you mentioned with your children, it's a wide gap between some of the kids. What does that look like for the younger kids and the older kids for you? And what the difference is a year ago?
A year ago. Yeah. A year ago, it's funny. I can be, transparent. A year ago, I had just gotten probably was 6 months into a minivan, which, for anyone who knows from a work from home, stay at home mom is like the best thing. And so I was actually doing pickup drop off was the biggest anxiety of my day. And we were actually featured in, the California Sunday paper, part of the LA Times and San Francisco Chronicle, for hiring a mother's helper. So they have a picture of us on our deck with the mother's helper. So this time last year, I had a mother's helper, pick up, drop off, and it was a lot. And I had 3 different schools, but thankfully my special needs daughter goes to, she gets, bused. So a year ago was different. And if I'm honest, a year ago, I was kind of drowning a little bit because the anxiety of being very particular, we live in the South Bay and we have an amazing community that's very diverse that I'm so grateful for. Let's be clear. But the truth of the matter is, and maybe this is my East Coast rearing, is that I have this high standard and I don't get to have like bad days at the pickup drop off line. So as a woman of color and as a family of color, so maybe that's like subconscious pressure, it's not that deep. Like we have some great parents and great community. So it's not that people would act funny, but the truth of the matter is I only get 1 day out of 100 to have a mean face, if that. So that pressure in of itself, along with making sure the stroller was properly set in, making sure I'm not leaking from still breastfeeding, and making sure like we're timing things and the snacks, it was a lot. It was a lot. And so to be honest, when COVID hit and everything stalled, aside from making sure I was prepared and making sure, my husband is an emergency manager, emergency management consultant. So he deals with natural disasters and wildfires and even COVID prep. So, it is different, but fast forward to remote learning. Again, I just had to have the standard. And I was telling Lee this in the call offline, is that I kind of had to have this baseline standard of like only giving myself two like checks out of 10 to like mess up, in 2 of those days. And so it just is kind of how I roll. So the good part about that is that that's like the baseline. So I'm always going to win at like at least a 70% level.
Sure.
Is that making sure I'm not pressuring myself. So what we did was we just had to be very deliberate about my first grader's setup for her classroom. And we set it up, near a wall in her room that was already good. And my first master's is in education. So as a former teacher, I just put on my teacher hat and made that little corner a classroom and everything. And then my special needs daughter, I just kind of differentiated instruction and made sure I didn't overwhelm myself. But I just set realistic boundaries because, again, no matter what, and I said this to a friend on Facebook, you should and she just happens to be, white. She's not African-American, but I'm like, you kind of shouldn't have told the school district you were drowning. Like, you shouldn't have told them that too soon, no matter what your background is, because all parents are kind of drowning now. So yeah, so that's how we've coped, and that's how it looked a year ago.
I love how it's different for everybody, right? I mean, I know that because of what we do, I get to talk to Lee at least once a week, and since March, it's been up and down. I think for both of us, how we're feeling, how we're doing, how our families are coping with this. And in the beginning, I was telling Lee, and I almost felt a little bit guilty about the fact that nothing had changed for me personally. I work from home. My kids have been homeschooled for the last 3 or 4 years. And so it was fine. And I saw so many people struggling, a lot of my friends struggling. And again, feeling that guilt a little bit kind of made me feel horrible, right? I didn't to feel guilty like this, but starting to see it now. My kids aren't, they're homeschooled, but they're not going to church like they used to. They're not going to play sports like they used to. They're not hanging out with their friends like they used to. And I'm starting to see it in the way they interact with each other and the way they interact with us. And, it's taking a toll on them as well. And so we're trying to figure out different ways to go about it. Lee, I know you have a little one at home as well. What's it like for you?
Well, it's been a combo. He's been going a little bit nuts. We have a porch, a deck, and he kind of talks to the world out there. And everyone, there was a time where he's just like, yakking and yelling, "Hey, hello," people he didn't know and stuff. But I used to work in mostly co-working spaces. And for a while I was so nostalgic that I had a picture of my co-working office and I put it as my virtual background, and I tried to fake it, and I tried to pretend that I was still at the co-working space. But it's not possible when there's a cat meowing or a kid walking through. And our solution, which works fairly well, the first one was talk to the hand, which was, it cost you $1 if you interrupt a Zoom session that mommy or daddy's on. And that kind of works because it's, negative works for a little while. But we started dividing out the house in a way. So the main living room area where I am now is the co-working space. And there's no negativity allowed in the co-working space. Just like in a real co-working space, like if someone had a meltdown or a tantrum or started shouting out their social security number, someone would come and stop that at a co-working space. Exactly. Sometimes, often. So we have that too. If there's a meltdown about homework or something like that, we try to gently, in my case, not so gently, in my wife's case, very gently, move that conversation into his room. And he has a desk which is kept clear, and there's an actual space for school, which he's never had before and never really needed because he went elsewhere. So dividing out our space, even virtually, in our minds, has been a big, big plus, because then I can kind of enforce that. I can say, I'm trying to edit a podcast here. We can't have Old Town, we can't have that playing. We can't have Beyonce's song playing right now because I'm trying to mix a podcast, something like that. So that has helped.
Yeah, this leads us perfectly into the next question, right? So you're talking about how you're able to divide school and work from home life. So let's turn it back to the panelists. How are you doing it? Are you having success or not with a division?
I think it's been really interesting, just the way that worlds collide, right? I kind of am with you, Ever, and Zach, that I'm more of the introvert and happy to be home and have a husband who is equally happy to just exist at home. And we don't have kids here, so that really worked just fine for us. But the worlds it was obvious pretty quickly how the worlds collided, because here I am running a K-8 school and having all of these Zoom meetings with parents and other students and teachers, and my husband's in the advertising world, and they have a completely different vernacular, and things are okay to say in the advertising world that I don't necessarily need my students listening to. And so some of those bright lines that really defined, school life versus work life, or work life versus home life rather, have been really interesting. Even not knowing when to shut off at night was really difficult for me. And I feel like that's continued to be difficult because we made ourselves so available to our families that now, even though we are back online, it's hard to kind of keep those boundaries because we made ourselves really available 24/7 for any kind of emotional support or anything that people needed, because we just wanted to support the kids and families. So that's been an interesting thing. And I think, Lee, it was smart to kind of divvy up the house that way. And we did something similar where, when you see the Zoom is on, my husband coded a kill switch that he could hit in the event that we needed to, shut off mics and things, which was kind of fun. But yeah, that bright line is gone. And so how to make those boundaries has been a really interesting challenge.
And does it seem to change from week to week, or have you been able to kind of establish those boundaries and those lines and stuck to them?
Yeah, I think it changes for me week to week. Some weeks I've been really good at just saying, I'm shutting everything down at 6:37 and I'm going to go do yoga and make dinner and kind of, put a routine in place to just tell my brain that you're not at work anymore. But depending on what's going on, sometimes that's easier said than done because somebody still needs you at 7:00 or, a teacher texts me and I'm going to answer that text. So, so it changes, I think, on any given day.
And I think we were already trending in that direction because a lot of us, with our smartphones and our laptops, we take work home with us a lot. And now with this, that we're home anyway, it just gets harder and harder. Zach, you work from home. How has that been for you with being able to kind of divide your work and home life?
So, my wife and I, like I said, we both work from home. And the way we manage that with small children is we basically divide up the day into chunks that we, one person is on and the other person's off. And then we get together in the evening as a family. But with stuff, it's just sort of mathematical. When I had a babysitter, I had something like 8 hours a day to work, and that got crushed down to 6. But none of my book deadlines changed, and so it's that thing where you're like, I thought I was at maximum efficiency, but it turns out there was a whole nother level which involved just reading until I passed out in bed, and then picking up a book first thing in the morning to read some. Most of what I do is research, and so it's become, instead of doing something I sit down and enjoy doing, it's become something I do like a fire hose, which putting a positive spin on it, I'm sure I've achieved a level of efficiency that will serve after COVID is gone. But for the moment, it's a bit much.
Yeah, interesting. I like, Eraina, we'll get to you here in just a sec, but I think that it's hard. And I don't know about you, Lee, but even though we've been doing this for a long time and we still struggle with the boundaries as far as being able to shut it off, or even during the day. I have my kids, oldest is 13, youngest is 9, old enough to know better, but they still barge in. We still spend a lot of time with them. And so it gets difficult. And I think because of the longer that this has taken, it's every week is different for us. And I'm assuming it's different for everybody out there as well. Yeah.
Well, when I worked out of the house, I rode a bike, a short ride to and from work. And you have to concentrate on the bike ride or you're going down, you're going to run into a car. So that was my dividing line. And I had that every workday. And my mind never really shuts off. I have note cards all over the place and notebooks, and I'm constantly interrupting people at dinner and saying, excuse me, I have to go write something down. But that's the way people who are around me are kind of used to that. Devices, though, are banned. And the one thing a lot of families talk about that is, we don't have devices at the dinner table. And I'm pretty much, I get in a lot of trouble if the computer's still open and up after a certain amount of time, because it's just uncool. The mind does need to rest. You can't do this all the time. So, I found that some change, but I've mostly switched to note cards and pencils after a certain point in the day. I can get away with that. Yeah.
Nice. Eraina, I wanted to bring this one to you last because, I don't know you well, but you seem like somebody that's very, very structured and maybe already has these lines and follows them day to day. Maybe not, but I'm interested to see how you're coping with this and being able to kind of keep the divide there.
Well, first of all, let's just say thank you guys for this, because my family's gone. And
take a break.
Because, oh my goodness. So the cool thing about me is that because I am so particular and hard on myself, we got this line, this standard for me. I probably have about 5 important, my husband's in a, full-time emergency management consultant. His firm is 5 blocks away, by the way. And he was essential, so he still gets to go into the office because there's only 2 people in the office. So he never stopped going in the office. So that right there, like the days that we had to be quarantined because he traveled and he had to come back and he couldn't go into the office, those were like 14 days of pure, really, So anyway, that's the first thing. But to go back to how you say about being structured, when I have, like I said, I have about 5 or 6 kind of like important, and you guys are in there, Zooms, a month that are like, special speaking engagements for my alumni group, which are like 1,000 people on a webinar, that has to be like, it has to be perfect. And that I schedule those in advance with my husband and he takes the kids out, or I rent a space to make sure I have that. I'm very strict with that because I'm mommy and I have 4 kids, and I'm in my daughter's room right now because we actually, with 4 girls, have a 2-bedroom apartment. So we don't have a huge space. And so what we realized very quickly is that we started to look for houses, probably 3 months in, because we knew that. But to answer your question, I'm very structured. My timing is structured. My husband does the 1 hour with our 4-year-old. She has 1 hour of preschool virtually. So he does that for us 3 days a week. I do the other 15-minute intervals for my special needs daughter. And yesterday we sat on a 1.5-hour computer class with Wix because they have one for teenagers to build websites. And I signed her up even with her special needs, and we differentiated instruction. So we're having an amazing time. So, I just make sure to structure it in a way. I have to sit with her, but I don't have to sit with my first grader. She's very independent for her 3 hours online, or 2.5 hours with recess. So, we have to do that. And I have to give the props to my husband. It seems like I'm the intense one. I'm particular. I'm X, Y, and Z. The truth of the matter is my husband was all about bedtime and naps pre-COVID. So very strict with those. So that really helped us when everything happened because we just kept that, and we have a fun night once a week with the tent. And so we have our little fun night. So that helps. But the biggest thing that helps, honestly, like if my husband had to work from home, I just would make him rent an office. I'm sorry. Yeah. Like I would make him declare, if my husband was not essential, I would have him call one of his doctor friends or one of his buddies and say, you got to have his office.
We hear that a lot for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I would not do that because the couple times that he had to be on the deck, he was on the deck in 90-degree heat. And the poor guy had to put umbrellas up on the deck, to make sure.
You got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do. So, yeah, that's pretty much how we're rolling. But we definitely are looking for homes because we're ready for a house. So that's our biggest pain point. But the honest to God truth is that I just have to schedule my Zooms, and my husband gets to do all his work at work. So.
You're making it work.
Yeah.
Now we've all seen. I'm assuming we've all seen this viral clip of. I think it was a BBC clip where this very important looking man, suit and tie, talking to the BBC. He's obviously in his bedroom or in his home office, and his kids run in. Do you guys remember? Have you guys seen that that clip? Then the mom comes in right after, almost crawling, trying to get the kids out. That was funny, first of all. Embarrassing, I'm sure, for the guy. But I think a lot of us are sitting back looking and laughing at ourselves. I think this was pre-COVID too when it happened. But we can look at that clip and chuckle a little bit because it's happening to all of us now. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. We're on important calls, a podcast, whatever it is, conference call. Our dog's barking, our kids are crying. Our wives or husbands or partners are walking behind us when it's a video call. It happens all the time. So I know some of you guys are in management positions or in these different important positions, and some of us are employees as well. Where's the expectation from our bosses, our clients, our coworkers? Have we thrown that out the window now?
I feel like with my people, I've said both ways. Like we're just going to have to embrace the humanity of the moment and appreciate that this is just going to collide for a little bit. And to parents, no judgment of what we see going on in the house, right? The disaster of what a room looks like. It doesn't. No judgment on our part, and we've just really embraced the idea of grace and flexibility. It's what we say over and over and over. And like I said, the hardest thing for me from the boss standpoint is really coexisting with someone in advertising who has completely different what's okay and what's not okay. So like I said, that kill switch has been very useful on many a day. But from my standpoint, you know, I say to my teachers as well, like, just give yourself grace, flexibility, you know, wherever we can get internet today is okay. If you're, you know, one day, one of my teachers needed to be in the car outside of the school building because that's where the internet was working, and his local internet just wasn't going to cut it. So, so we're just being as flexible as we can. And we asked our community to extend that to us, and we would extend it back. And that's worked pretty well for us.
Yeah, I think sometimes we just need to survive, right? Some of those days we just need to survive, no matter what happens in the background. Zach, I know you have a little bit different situation there. What's it like for you with when it comes to bosses, clients, or coworkers?
Yeah, I'm, you know, like I said, most of what I do is research. And what's been really valuable is that the major project I have going right now is one I'm working on with my wife. So we're kind of in the trenches together. And I feel like when you're not working on the same thing together and you're kind of in separate spheres, it can be tough to understand the other person. It can be easier to get upset with somebody. But, you know, if I have to watch the kids all day so she can get something done, she is helping me because we're on the same project, which I think makes an enormous amount of difference. And I'm sure, you know, a perfectly rational person could extend that logic to their life in general or their marriage in general. But it helps to have a particular project you're working on.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been finding. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I've been finding an interesting leveling of the playing field, where if I'm trying to get new clients or talking to someone in New York, or you know, someone who's used to being in an office, and I see they're in their spare bedroom, and hey, I'm in my spare bedroom. You know, I'm teaching a course in the living room, and the students are in their living rooms, and there's something okay about that, which I kind of like. It's expectations kind of leveling out, and you know, I haven't seen a person in a suit and tie and since what, February, March.
Yeah,
you know,
I
mean,
yeah.
You know, we have our Zoom shirts as they're called, but no one is like fakely dressing up for things.
Lee, I noticed that
going on in the back, underneath too, right?
Yeah, I noticed that as well. We had teachers to hire in the midst of all this. We had to hire. And so there was something really nice about all of us just being, you know, stuck wherever we were in our house and not, you know, dressing up. And it did, I think it did give us a different kind of equity that was kind of neat.
Yeah, it makes us feel like we're all in this together. And I think we're a lot more forgiving for the most part. I mean, I haven't seen too much fallout from a messy room or a crying baby, not just with me or those that I work with, but I think overall even. I mean, we have seen some of these clips on, embarrassing clips on YouTube and on Facebook and those type of things. But overall, I think it's been pretty positive. Eraina, what has been your experience?
I think it's been great. I mean, I'm very like, I'm like so particular. My husband's more laid back in terms of his job because they really have a great team, you know, just a really great team. And they've been very welcoming. The CEO is a highly successful woman who has, you know, been very empathetic to the circumstances. But at the same time, I always like try to tell him like, hey, just go in and do everything you can if you have to do some work from home. So I do that with him. But for me, yesterday was a prime example. After being like literally on remote learning till 5:30, at 6:10, I get a call from a software company that I was thinking about partnering with. And I kind of skipped the call. I like almost missed the call. And so I had to tell him like, look, I hate the reschedule because it's hard. So, you know, so we just did the call and I like was off of screen time. I mean, you know, he couldn't see my face and it was just the voice and we worked through it and he was so patient and I was grateful. So that's, you know, I have found that people have been incredibly gracious, and with the schools, they've been really great, specifically because we've never missed a day of school. It's the extracurricular activities that I just have had to drop. Which are interesting. So, and I did give, I'm a TEDx curator, so I hosted a TEDx event from a hotel room. and the coolest thing about the content is that I was using TED 2020 content, and it was so cool to see everyone in their living room who was doing a TED talk or a TED performance, they were doing it from their living room. So it just felt so intimate for us to sit there and look at how different everyone's living room was as they performed or spoke for us. So yeah, grace is abounds.
Nice. Lee, let me go to you for this next one. There are positives and negatives with all of this that's going around with the pandemic and our lives and how it's changed from one year to the next. What are some of the, are you seeing more positives, more negatives in your own personal life? And then are you looking forward to when all of this gets back to normal, if it ever goes back to normal?
Right. Well, to answer in reverse, I don't think there's going to be a normal again. I think that we've reached some new crazy equilibrium, which is there's no normal to look back to, because if anything, to begin answering the other part of that, the interconnectedness of everything has really come home in this. We have wildfires and bad air quality. We have health issues and pandemic issues and healthcare issues. We have racial unrest and protests because of police brutality, which is connected to the environmental injustice and educational inequality that people feel. So in a way, that's completely overwhelming. But in another way, it's something that's really brought home to me that none of these things are separate anymore, and none of them are abstract anymore. So they're real. It's here. It's all very real. We have smoke coming down from the mountains again today, and so we had to turn on the air purifiers. But it's starting me really thinking about, okay, what's this going to look like for my kids? And that's an important thing to think about. Not that I never thought about that, but I'm thinking about that in a more global way.
Real now, yeah, sure.
The other thing is the lost part of things is, my kid really needs to play with other kids, and the teachers really need to teach those kids in person eventually. So I am looking forward to maybe early next year, maybe in March next year, that the schools can open up here in Los Angeles and the kids can connect with each other again a bit more. We do little play dates with bikes and masks and kind of riding up and down the street, but it's not the same, as playing a game together. So I definitely look forward to the kids getting out there more. I don't mind being on Zoom. I would like to get back into studios to do podcasts instead of trying to convince people to, put more furniture in their room so it absorbs sound.
Yeah. Zach, pros and cons of all of this, and are you looking forward to getting back to normal, if there's such a thing?
Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to getting back to something resembling normal. To me, the thing I think about is it's like my life has now been totalized between work and kids. So what I found I miss, like I was talking to someone about this the other day. There's this sort of dichotomy I think is forming where if you have little kids at home, you feel very busy, you feel very anxious and stressed. What you don't feel, I don't think, is a sort of ennui, because there is no time for it. There's no time for a sort of like sitting around staring at the wall. I would kill to be able to sit around and stare at a wall and wonder about the nature of things, but it just can't be done. I have a completely different realm of anxiety from friends I have who are young and single. And I wonder if that'll be a sort of, I feel like we can't assume that our personal experience is applicable to other people. Like I said, the people I know who are, say, 25 and single, their experience right now is in a way, it sounds like it should be easier, but I wonder if it's harder. It's more sort of boredom and depression, that sort of thing.
Kelly, what do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking, I tend to be pretty optimistic in my outlook always. I'm looking for silver linings. So that's a little bit easier for me to think, what have we gained? We've gained, new perspective, new sorts of empathy that I don't think that have existed before. From a school standpoint, it's been, when we were online, I feel like we developed a different sort of empathy with the families that we serve, because you are in their homes every day, literally. And formed partnerships like we just haven't done before. When you can drop your kids off at school, kind of wave goodbye and then go about your day, that's easy to do. But when everybody's kind of in your home together, and kids are having meltdowns, it's not just, a school issue or a home issue. It's how do we partner and work through this together and really support each other. So I think that has been really nice. And I hope there's some semblance of that carries through. I definitely, I was looking through photos yesterday from last year and just remembering some of the things that we could do as a community that just aren't possible right now. And really, I miss that so much. And I hope that sometime we can get back to that semblance of normal, because I think we take so much for granted of just, being together and being in community. So I really miss that. I'm hopeful that moving forward, what we take beyond just, from a school perspective is really recognizing, like Lee said, that we are all connected. There's this great quote by Da Vinci that I'm going to butcher, but it learn to see that everything connects to everything else. And I think this is a moment where we're seeing that amplified. And I hope that, kids are remembering as we move forward that, all of those little micro actions really do impact the rest of the community in important ways, and how that translates into their learning and beyond. I'm hopeful that from an education perspective, we really take a step back and really look at what does it mean to be a learner? Is it best recorded through a test, or is it really more human than that? And I think, obviously, I built my school thinking it's more human than that. And I'm hopeful that everyone will take a step back and say, yeah, what is a first grader? Is that really, that's a construct we've created? How do we just keep kids moving forward in their learning, engaged and excited, and not try to box it in so much? So I'm hopeful that's something we carry forward.
I love it. Yeah, it's scary to think that. I mean, for us, we were terrified in the beginning, thinking, "Wait, are we screwing this up?" When we started doing homeschooling, and then with the pandemic, it kind of turned our lives upside down a little bit, especially with this move that we had. I'm sitting here thinking, "Are we screwing our kids up? What are we doing?" But really, we love them. They're fed. There is some education there going on. Obviously, my wife is a professor, and so she's obviously in charge of that. I think we're going to be okay. And I think for the most part, all of our kids are going to be okay moving forward. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I would agree. I think our biggest hindrance is ourselves and the definitions that we've put around things, the expectations we've put around things. We keep saying younger and younger that kids need to learn to read. And we've kind of taken all of the natural rhythms out of, just child development in general, because we want them to hit certain benchmarks and do certain things. And I think this is really a time for us to remember that those natural rhythms exist, and that there are times when, we voraciously are reading everything we can get our hands on. And there's also times when, we set the book aside and we get really interested in, sketching or whatever it may be. And that's really okay. And I think we're seeing that now, even, what you all have described, family life looking like, it kind of ebbs and flows and looks different from season to season. And I'm hopeful that starts to extend out into our larger world, and that we start to really recognize too how much emotion plays into what we're able to do in every other area of life, right? When we're in trauma mode because we suddenly are shifting and we're afraid, that very much changes what kids were able to learn in the spring. And I think, you heard a lot of educators talking about we're in crisis teaching. This isn't online teaching. We're really in crisis mode right now. And that was true. And so to hear, politicians and people saying, well, how are we going to get kids caught up in August? It was completely the wrong question. It's how are we going to help kids feel safe and some sense of normalcy, even in the midst of this very strange time. And then how do we take them from where they are and help them continue in their learning rather than, how do we catch them up to this arbitrary thing?
I love it. Thank you so much.
Hmm.
Eraina, for you, pros and cons of all of this.
I think the pros were, especially the first like 6 months, it accelerated everything that, well, not everything. It accelerated a lot of the major red marks that needed to be dealt with in terms of like career, family, marriage. I mean, like it made us like get to the nitty gritty to come out so much better on the other side. One example is like us redecorating our living room, making sure our space, like the same deck that was on a professional photo that was like empty with concrete, we really had to redo it because it was the source of 7 events, like 7 like birthday parties. And so that's the pros of it. The cons were the loss. I don't think in the last 8 months I've experienced this magnitude of grief in terms of losing a couple people to COVID, some even some third degree connections to big name stars. You're feeling the loss and grief differently. So I think that's the cons of it. Maybe because we're not able to be out, or maybe because it would have happened anyway and we just are internalizing it different. And I think, I just want to give a piece of advice. It's a Mattel family Zoom opportunity, like the little testers they do. I was on a Zoom with moms and they changed my life about 3 months ago. They told me how one person told me how her kids had been in school the whole time since like March. And someone else mentioned something else about their kids getting out. And I'm not recommending this for anyone. I want everyone to keep their standard and bar. But around that time, my first grader had really started to change personality wise. I was just worried, and I just was like, something has to happen. I just kind of took some quiet time. And literally I got a text or email from the local little gym that they were having this summer camp. And it was like socially distanced and, they would do cleaning. And though, it was a pilot cohort, so we had to trust her, we had to trust it. And we put ourselves out there and we did it. And it was a game changer. And so again, I'm not saying that any parents on here should do that. You follow what you feel led. But when I saw that this was changing my daughter, I had to do something. And so we only, we did like 3 days a week, 2 hours a day. And, they had their mask on the whole time, except for lunch that they ate outside and, everything and temperature checks and stuff. But it really was good for everyone. So we're actually going to do that again through a club they have for a couple of hours. And that's just is helpful because when school does open back up, and it's actually opening for my special needs daughter next week for 3 hours a day. If I hadn't sent one child out, and I didn't go by the protocols and start the process, we would have, it just would have been it would have been like not so good for our family. So I just wanted to throw that out there with the cons. That's something that our family did. And my special needs daughter, who's autistic and deaf, also has epilepsy. So she is high risk. So it's one of those things decisions that we've had to make as a family and set the proper procedures in and really connect with our healthcare team to make sure, but we had to do it. So.
I think if we lined up 100 people, we would hear a lot of different types of pros, a lot of different types of cons. And one of the things that we can, I think all agree on, it's different for everybody, right? I mean, we're all kind of dealing with this, but the way we're dealing with it, and just because of the dynamic of our families and our work life and our school life, it's affecting a lot of different people, a lot of different ways. And I think one of the pros that I see is that I think we're all giving ourselves room to grieve or to be afraid and to screw it up sometimes. I think, I know we see a lot of nonsense on in the media with some of the riots and different things like that. But I think overall in our communities, it feels tighter. I mean, maybe it's just where we are, but overall, I think neighbors taking care of neighbor for the most part is what we're seeing. Anything on your end? Any of you?
Well, I think for us, initially in terms of COVID and, the racism around Asian Americans being here in the South Bay of Torrance, I was very protective and very deliberate in how I engaged and how I supported. And the one incident that was kind of public at a local park, and it was a woman who had mental illness, but the community stood up, and we've been deliberate in standing up, especially at the height of COVID in March and April. But I saw that as well. I see people try harder to smile at I see that, but I'm going to be honest, it's kind of the beauty of California. And so people can say what they want to about us, but gosh darn it, we're happy. And we're going to get through this, and we're going to try, and we're going to look each other in the eye and do the best we can. And I appreciate that, because it is kind of California privilege. Because other states, or LA privilege, other states may be going through something different. But for the most part, I'm grateful for that. And if I was in a place that wasn't handling it well, I would just pack up and leave. Honestly, I don't think I could take it. So I'm grateful.
I'm glad. Now, as we start to wrap this up, last question for all of you, including you, Lee. First of all, I appreciate all of you being on, but let's end with this. With everything that's going on, we talked about how everybody is affected differently, right? We're all kind of in this together, but in different stages. For you personally, what is the single biggest reason for you surviving this? Some of us are thriving, others are, up and down. For you specifically, what are some of your survival tips for the rest of us? Zach, we'll start with you.
Sure. I don't have a good tip. But what's been good for me, by kind of coincidence, about 6 months before all this hit, we moved we bought an old farm in the country, which we've been planning to do, and doesn't replace socialization for the kids or anything like that, but just an editor of mine, she and her husband and 2 kids are in a 1-bedroom in New York. And I don't know how anyone got out of that alive, quarantining in that setting. I just don't know how they. I think they eventually did try to get out of the city, but I think they were in that 1-bedroom apartment for 6 months, and it's New York City, could hardly go out. So I just don't know how that works. So we feel very lucky. We have some room to roam, which I think has helped a lot.
Nice, yeah. For me, it's really been being very conscious of my media consumption. I used to immediately hit Twitter in the morning, hit Twitter at night, and read the papers, read many newspapers. And I was starting not to be able to sleep because it was just too much information. So now I'm much more deliberate in the way that I schedule what media I look at, and don't do any random doom scrolling. If I catch myself doom scrolling, I immediately put the phone away and try to just keep things simpler. Read more books. I have a big stack of actual books to read. And that's probably been my coping mechanism, just internally.
I love it. Yeah, the whole media thing is a big deal. It really affects all of us. Eraina, let's go with you. Any survival tips?
Honestly, probably about 3 months in, once we got past the big, New York wave, maybe it was early summer, I took an overnight. I just took my hand sanitizer and, I went, and I called my favorite hotel down the street, the Marriott here. And I said, hey guys, I know you're back open. What have you done? They said, actually, we just renovated this whole floor. So you can have a room on the high floor. And so I took an overnight, and I'm taking another one on Friday for my special needs daughter's 21st birthday. And then I'm taking another one on October 15th. So that's been my claim to fame. If anyone feels comfortable being in a setting, just take your hand sanitizer. Just if you want to take your own bed sheets, who cares? Yeah. And the remotes are clean. You can clean it again. And if you're really particular like that, but to be honest, game changer. And get a hotel that still has room service with no cart. But you said, oh yeah, I'm extra. Oh yeah. I was I'm the woman who went to a hotel suite down the street after giving birth to baby number 4. So don't ask me about self-care. I'm going to do it. But so that's been the thing that's been the most helpful. And then, also just like you said, turn off the media stuff, turning it off, being very deliberate, not engaging in conversations in that regard. I just, the baby boomers are amazing. I love them. My parents are baby boomers, but they are traumatized right now. Mm-hmm. And so they've been traumatized for a while. And so I have to even turn off how I care for them, because hearing my mother upset almost broke me recently. Mm-hmm. Hearing her upset around politics. The baby boomers are not doing well. So check on your baby boomers. And so I just really just have to make sure, even in caring for them, that I don't burn myself out. And I kind of have to because when they send me text messages or something that's coming on, I just have to ignore it, because I can't take it in. So that's been my most radical versions of self-care and my spiritual base. Yeah. And God, of course, my spiritual base.
Good. To jump on a little bit of what you were saying about taking the overnight, taking the day to yourself, that's huge, right? My wife, who's been teaching for a long time, she teaches at the university. She's writing a book, right? She's busy as well. Sometimes she's a little bit too hard on herself because she's not with the kids 24/7, or she's not doing this, or whatever. But we've luckily been able to kind of let her take days whenever she wants them, and she is better for it. We are better for it. It's needed, right? There's no shame in, hey, I need a couple of hours to myself to take a drive or whatever. Do it if that's what you need to do to survive all of this, and not just during these times, but I think life in general, right? Take a moment to yourself and do whatever you need to kind of get back into the right headspace to attack the following day.
Totally.
Kelly, what about you? Any survival tips?
I just so appreciate what you said, Eraina, because I think of, you get on an airplane and what do they tell you to do if the oxygen mask drops down? You got to put it on yourself before you help others. We're no good to each other if we're not taking care of ourselves. So I very much appreciate that you are doing that. And at the beginning, when things were shutting down here in Colorado, I would see moms and dads really just melting down, like, I need time. And we would say, you know what? You've got a spouse at home, go for a drive, go drive through the mountains by yourself, grab a coffee on the way, and just, and spend a few hours in the car by yourself. And it's amazing what that does. For me, I think the biggest thing has been to remember that grace is not just for others, it's also for ourselves. Mm-hmm. I'm fairly good at extending grace to others, but I feel like we're always harder with ourselves, or at least I tend to be that way. And really for me, it was giving myself permission to sit out on the back deck in the beautiful Colorado weather before we had all the fires and ash raining down. But just to take advantage of being outdoors and really breathing the fresh air and having a cadence that we couldn't necessarily have before. Doing yoga, as my cutoff every day was a good reset for my brain. And I love to cook. So really making cooking a priority and just having fun with that was important for me. But extending that grace, I think, grace and flexibility for ourselves as well.
That's huge. Thank you for that. Thank you all of you for your tips and for just having this amazing discussion. I think we can go on for another hour or two talking about all of this.
Oh, but I have to make dinner.
That's right. There's definitely enough.
I'm doing the same.
Make dinner. What's that? That's
what
how I survive.
There's definitely enough of this to keep going. But we really appreciate you taking the time, the hour to spend with us. For those of you that are listening now and in the replay, let's give it up for these guys, for the panelists. They've been amazing. Let's go down the road real quick. Everybody, the ones that's interested, tell us where we can find you online. Eraina, where can we find you online?
You can find me at, I am on. I thought I was muted. Yeah, you can find me at www. We don't even say www anymore. mygoodlifenow.org. mygoodlifenow.org is my website.
Love it. Kelly?
You can find me on Twitter at KTENKELY, K Tenkely. You can find me at thelearninggenomeproject.com, at dreamsofeducation.wordpress.com, and ilearntechnology.com.
Very nice. Zach?
I'm at smbc-comics.com.
Nice and easy. And we're going to have this on the webpage as well. And when we send this out via email. Lee, where can we find you?
FutureX.fm is my main thing. And on Twitter at DocuGuy. And my company for podcast production is redcupagency.com.
Very nice. For me, at _Ever Gonzalez with a Z at the end, or at Outlier HQ. Feel free to drop any of us a note, what you liked, what we could have talked a little bit more of, and then what else you want to see in our future series. Lee and I have committed to the next 4 months at least. I'm assuming a lot more, but at least for the next 4 months, we want to do this series once a month, and we're going to have different panelists, different topics. If you have an idea for a topic, let us know. Email us, reach out on social media, and we are happy to take any recommendations. Again, Eraina, Kelly, Lee, Zach, this was amazing. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night.
Thank you. It was a privilege.